Welcome to the Better Ottawa Municipal Panel. My name is Neil Saravanamutu. Today is Monday, March the 17th, and we are here to talk about the last week at Ottawa City Hall. With me, as always, are our panelists, Joanne Chianello and John Willing. Welcome to you both.
Hello. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I mean, it will be past that by the time people are listening to it, but I'm having a fun time.
Yeah. Was there any news over the weekend about craziness happening in the market or any pubs around?
Well, actually, no, because the St. Patrick's Day parade got canceled. Actually, also a City Hall story because they don't have the money to get like enough security anymore, like to pay for all the stuff you need for it, which is bad. And we need to figure out a plan for that.
They should just walk down the sidewalk. No road closures, just like a nice orderly line down the sidewalk, down a street. There was a street flooded over the weekend, though, I think, because of all the rains downtown. So it was a bit of chaos in central Ottawa. So either was a bit of news.
Well, this should have been a quiet week at City Hall, but apparently it wasn't. With March break, it should have been. But we've got 4 items on the docket for today. So first of all, of course, we've got a new Prime Minister and Cabinet that have been sworn in, and we're all expecting an election call imminently. So first question will be, what does this mean for the City of Ottawa? The second issue we want to look at today is Sprung Structures. So the city has reversed its decision to go ahead with that project. So was that the right move? Third issue we want to talk about is the schedule for the National Capital Commission's Bike Days is out. And what does this tell us about who's winning the war on cars? And then finally, we will have our lightning round where we respond to comments and questions from you, the listener. So first up, Mark Carney. He's been sworn in. And he has announced his cabinet. So Joanne, can you just update us on what this means for Ottawa in terms of representation?
Well, who knows, right? Because it's very short term. This time next week when we're having this panel, I'm sure we're going to be talking about what does the new election mean for Ottawa, because this government's not going to survive very long. They're not going to wait to go back to the House and have the opposition, bring them down in a vote of non-confidence. This Liberal government will call the election itself by the weekend. I already know, for example, Ottawa Centre, the Liberals are having their launch party on Saturday, right? Everybody, okay. It's not exactly a big secret. But what happens in Ottawa for representation? Not too much, right? So David McGuinty, he has been the MP for Ottawa South for 20 years. He only became a cabinet minister in December.
This stunned me, actually, seeing the history.
Eighth time's the charm, David. Way to go.
Welcome to the team.
I always felt bad, too, because he's a pretty smart guy. But he waited a long time, and now he has a super important job. He is the Minister of Public Safety, has always been important, of course, through the convoy. That was a big deal. Marco Mendicino made kind of a mess of that. And now he's, of course, the Chief of Staff to Mark Carney, which is an odd thing that's happened. Anyway, so David McGuinty, he stayed in his job. They need that continuity. He seems to be doing a good job. And if the Liberals manage to win somehow, I don't know, they are certainly gaining in the polls. He might actually even stay there because with the situation down south, that is quite important. So this isn't going to last long, but it is important to say that to have some cabinet ministers from town.
Right. Well, and of course, one other big change, right? Jenna Sudds is no longer in cabinet. As Mr. Carney,
I never understood that portfolio, I have to say. It's like middle class stuff.
Yeah, and she ascended to the cabinet pretty quickly too. Remember, she's a city councillor in Canada, and then of course left to become to get elected as an MP, and then became a cabinet minister pretty quickly. But in terms of Ottawa representation right now, I mean, we have some, but everything, as Joanne said, it's going to change quickly. The question is going to be.
We have none. Well, okay, Steve McKinnon from Gatineau, but we have and
McGuinty.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what do we expect?
Where is Carney going to run? Like maybe he's going to run in Ottawa, and like he has lived in Rockcliffe for at least 15 years, right?
Maybe.
All the time that he's lived in Canada, he's lived in Rockcliffe.
You don't think it's going to be Alberta?
Maybe.
Well, we'll find out probably in less than a week, right?
Yeah.
So
okay.
So that would be somebody influential.
Okay. Well, listen, I mean, obviously could have big implications, but we'll talk more about it next week. So the first substantive item for
You're
us.
really keeping us like right on the schedule.
Of course I am. First substantive item today is Sprung Structures. So and if I can just pause for a minute and say that
you'll take a victory laugh.
I'd like to take a victory laugh. In January, I wrote an article in Substack saying that, and I think the title was "It's Time for Plan B on Sprung Structures." So I am happy to report that the city.
So why were you against them?
Well, maybe I can ask John first just to explain the situation.
Yeah, sure.
What these reception centers are all about and why we've reversed the decision.
This is hot news, probably the hottest news out of City Hall last week, but I think it was the hottest news in 2024 for that calendar year. A lot of protests. So a memo came out. It was March 12th. I believe that was Wednesday, right? If I remember correctly, from the city saying they won't pursue a sprung structure, the tent beside.
They hate it when you call it a tent.
I call it a tent. It looks like a tent, a
right.
fancy tent, dorm inside, essentially. Anyway, they're not going to pursue it beside the Sportsplex. They're also eyeing a second location, possibly in Canada. But the city decided they're not going to go this way. And they're chalking it up. The city's chalking it up to there being fewer asylum claimants coming into the city. The number peaked, according to the city, at 1,000 in 2023, and they're down to about just over 800 now, apparently. So a couple of things the city also cited, right, was the YMCA has saved itself. They're not going to put the building up for sale down Argyle. And so there's some space that's going to be created there. But also that federal building near Westboro Station. I think it's an old Health Canada building, right?
I think it was the old CBC building.
Yeah, it's on Lanark.
Yeah.
But it sounds like the feds aren't going to sell that right away. So there's an opportunity for the city to keep talking about using some space in that building to house some newcomers as well. So I guess maybe did the stars align perfectly? Or it was such a hot political potato that now is the time to pull the plug.
Yeah. And I mean, I think
That's the one.
Mixed metaphors there, I know, but
hot political potato for sure. But Joanne, to answer your comment about what was happening back in September that made it so clear that this was, that we were looking for a plan B. Clearly there was a political challenge to this file. That was clear from day one, and the fact that it had such an uphill battle to run. But what was more important is that we actually have an existing solution for managing asylum seekers in Ottawa that's worked very well for a number of decades. And simply what we needed to do, as I argued in the paper, was just scale that up, take the existing solution and scale it up. And why it took the city so long to come around to that conclusion, I'm not sure. But nonetheless, well, you think that's what it comes down to?
I think a lot of this is politics. I take the city's points that, for example, they found some more space. They're going to get a couple more floors at the YMCA. The Lanark building was possibly in play. I know it was for sale. An Indigenous group was looking at it and they didn't have that. So to be, a little bit fair to the city, they have a little bit more certainty on some housing. However, most of the numbers they're throwing into that memo about we have all these units available and we're building this and we're building that. You already knew that, city. You already knew.
What the why might be new information.
The why might be new. That's what I say. The why and Lanark, to have that confirmed, I think that's good. Yes, it's lower asylum seekers now, but I just want to point out, I looked back at the communique out of the government, out of immigration. There is a lower target for permanent residents, but asylum seekers is not part of that, right? So why it's lower now? Probably a number of things. It probably has to do with a lot from the U.S. border as well. But it's actually not a federal target. So that number could go up. And I think it's important to say that the folks in the refugee settlement world, that 613, Refugee 613, some other folks I was reading about, they were disappointed, right? Because one thing that this does is the Sprung structure would have done is bring services right to folks where they are. Because, when you hear from the experiences of people who have been refugees, they're like, you show up, you don't know where to go or what to do. And this was going to be a one-stop shop. So I hope that in these new solutions, I didn't think it was a great idea either, Sprung. In the new solution, I hope that they can bring all of those services together. But I remember when the announcement was first made, and I thought, so many mistakes are being made here. Political mistakes and communication mistakes. Number one, the mayor saying, we let the staff choose this because we didn't want to make it political. Are you kidding me? Everything's political, and especially this kind of a thing. The poor local councillor did not get any heads up, found out when the memo came out, you can't do that. And I felt kind of badly on the reaction. It was very controversial. I would say I heard with my own ears some concerns that were really intolerant. And so, you don't want to say those folks have a point because that's just not acceptable. But you did also hear people who just wanted some more information and they were afraid to ask because they didn't want to be thought of as racist. But also the city provided few answers. I think I had to find a good Q&A from Councillor Marty Carr, who had some answers, right? So you have to like understand this is going to be controversial. What are the questions people are going to have? Do we have the answers? And it was not planned well. I mean, you should have known it was going to be controversial and planned for that. Also, they were saying, I think the memo said they had to, they canceled it because it was going to take too long. And part of it was they had to go to procurement for the construction.
God forbid.
Yeah, exactly. Why didn't you plan that at the beginning? Like you said, in fact, the city said, we're going to want to do this quickly. And these are the only people who can build it. And then when there was pushback at that, they looked around and said, oh, actually, there are other people who could build it. I guess we better have an RFP. No, if you'd had the RFP at the beginning, it wouldn't have delayed it. So I have a lot of issues with the way that it was. I don't think it's the best structure, like for the reasons that you say as well. But I also think if they were going to go with that, there were a lot of things they should have done better.
I think, I guess, take away the political part about it, and maybe the money part, because it's talk.
What else is left?
Well, if you're the city, you're like, okay, we need a solution quickly. Well, look at this tent we could put up.
Yeah,
and it seemed like a very simple answer. The Civic Hospital put up a structure too at one point. Is it still there at the Civic Hospital?
Yeah. And it was going to be like that one. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it seemed like an easy solution for at the time in 2023 seemed like a growing problem. And
except it wasn't even going to be ready for winter of 2025.
Well, and then
so that's not that fast.
Yeah. And now I'm thinking ahead to, okay, we've put the pin back in the grenade now, but what's going to happen going into the next winter? I wonder if the problem I don't know if it's going to go away anytime soon. So if you're the city, maybe.
And that's what the advocates are saying. There are still people who need housing now.
Yeah. And we're going into a warm, we just enjoyed some 19-degree weather this weekend, but we're going to get back into the colder season towards the fall. And I wonder if this issue is going to come up again. And in the meantime, what's the city doing behind the scenes to possibly prepare to do things differently? All the things that you said they did wrong to begin with, maybe to have a different approach when the colder months come back.
Yeah. And one of the things that's really important to emphasize is that so there was all this federal money that has been made available. What was referenced in the city documents was that they will try to renegotiate with the federal government for how those funds are used. Certainly part of it is to purchase more of what are called scattered sites, which are communal homes throughout the entire city. Could be on your street, could be on my street. No one really, they're just fairly invisible in the community.
But you need so many of them, right? This is a sprung structure, I guess, to John's point, that it was going to be efficient because it would have hundreds of people, right? Or I can't remember.
Well, about 130, I think was the number.
So now you would need 20 homes for that.
Yeah.
If on a small scale thing. I'm not saying that's wrong, but I'm just saying
absolutely.
Probably harder to manage for the city.
Well, I mean, it's the existing solution and it just can simply be scaled up. So in any case, I guess the question is, has the city learned its lesson? Are we going to make this mistake again?
I don't know. Like I said, I think it's an issue the homelessness issue is just writ large is an outstanding issue that we're trying to solve as a city. Forget about the newcomers and the asylum seekers right now. It's an issue that's live all the time. And so overlay this, I think it's going to come back. Have we learned a lesson? Maybe we've learned a lesson about the communication.
Yeah. We've been saying this for 15 years.
Right.
So
it's always,
I don't
we
know.
can always come back to but sometimes we always blame the communication too as the reason. It's not necessarily always to blame.
Well, I think it is sometimes to blame. Sometimes. I'm just saying it's not necessarily the fault of the communications people, right? Because where does that leadership come from?
Yeah. And maybe this is an issue, maybe to your point, Neil, maybe this is a way to rethink about how we provide temporary housing to people across the city in communities. Then again, I don't know what those communities will think about, these type of temporary housing opportunities put in their communities. I don't know, but I hope that the community is healed a bit out of this now that the political dynamite has been taken away of the situation.
Well, Sean Devine might get reelected now.
Well, I mean, this is far enough away from a municipal election too that maybe it'll quell.
Yeah.
But like I said, we'll see what happens when we get closer to next winter.
Yeah, and I guess my last thought on this is it's a real shame that when we look back at the 1970s. When I was a kid, and when we had the first wave of Vietnamese boat people that came, they came to Ottawa. Marion Dewar was the mayor at the time, and we actually turned what was a difficult situation into a triumph for the city. Right? We turned it into an opportunity. Whereas in this situation, we've done the exact opposite. Just created tension and animosity throughout the community.
And why is it different this time, you think?
Well, so I think
because of a structure.
I think it has to do with the way that the city approached it, the way it communicated with its residents. with Sprung, it's coming and take it.
But I think also it's a different cultural moment, right? I think there was a similar opening of people's communities and hearts during the Syrian refugee crisis, right?
Yes.
With Vietnamese boat people, it was a big thing. It was in the news, and people were very engaged in it. And what's happening now is these people are coming, I'm sure, are in just as dire need. But it's a constant trickle of 800 to 1,000 people all the time. And it's hard to have your attention on that all the time, I think.
Sure.
So,
yeah. Okay, let's move on to our next topic, which is the National Capital Commission Bike Days. So
spring is coming.
Spring is here. Spring is here. Last week, the NCC announced its schedule for 2025. So Joanne, can you just run through the differences between what we're going to have this year versus what we had last year?
So this year it starts on Saturday, May 10th, runs till Thanksgiving. On Kitigan, Zibi, Mikan, in both directions, it will be closed to cyclists and pedestrians and rollerbladers, whoever wants to be out there, from 8 till noon. Now, last year it was till 4 p.m. and more on that later. Now, Sir George Etienne Cartier Parkway, which I believe is called the
SJEG.
SJEG?
SJEG.
That's new for me.
Like C for Cartier. I know.
Acronyms in the city,
I know. Somebody said
unbelievable.
that to me. I'm like, oh, I'm such a Western end person. I don't know that. Anyway, the Eastern Parkway is going to be open from 8 to 8. That's the same.
Okay.
On Queen Elizabeth Drive, it's going to be also closed. I'm sorry, it's going to be closed from 8 to 8. Queen Elizabeth Drive also from Somerset to 5th Avenue is going to be closed from 8 to 8. Again, both Saturdays and Sundays. But last year they had that summer zone, which closed Somerset to 5th, like basically every day for July and August. And there were street games and animation, and there's like a big like X's and O's thing, and like football and displays. And they found during the week just not enough people taking it. So now they're going to move it to Dow's Lake. They're going to have a new recreational dock. I'm not sure what that means yet. I'm hoping it's going to be something like River House. So that's what's happening. The NCC is also, though, keeping all that Adirondack chairs, all the seating along the canal, because they heard that was very popular.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a lot of thoughts on this,
Okay.
but I'll let you talk for a minute.
Well,
because I don't want to just keep
John,
going.
what's your take on this? And tell us, what does this announcement say about who is winning the war on cars? Is it the cars or the bikes?
The cars will always win. The cars will always win. The war on cars, there's no war on cars. Here's the thing, though. It's about winning the battles, not about the war. It's about winning smaller battles. If you're a cyclist who's looking for protected bike infrastructure, safe bike infrastructure, and, I don't think you're going to win the war on cars, but you can find battles in communities, downtown, slowly. I know bike infrastructure is expanding. I think we talked about Wellington Street a couple times.
Until Ford comes along, they'll take it out.
Yeah. But I mean, no, I think I use the bike routes, the roads that are going to be closed. I use those in the past. They're super popular. I noticed they weren't as well used as maybe the city or the NCC would have liked. And I get that Lansdowne needs to have cars coming in. People might argue, well, why do we care about cars?
I don't think it's about Lansdowne.
Well, I don't think it's solely about Lansdowne,
I do think
OSEG. If you're OSEG, I think you have you're a big stakeholder in this.
Yeah, I know they complain a lot about stuff, but I would say number one, it's still going to be closed on the week, like on the weekends. So I did talk to some people, and so there's actually data, right? Then, like, I live near KZM, and they have counters. You see people, they know how many, like the NCC knows how many people are using it. Kitigan Zibi Mikan is just not used as much anymore. Whereas the eastern one, SJEC, like it doesn't have as many stop signs. It doesn't have as many egresses, like entrances and exits. And actually, it's actually busier. That's why it's going to stay open 12 hours. Also, like, we recall back pre-pandemic, I know that's 5 years now. It actually used to only, like, the parkway only used to be closed in the mornings, right? On Sunday mornings only.
Bike days,
Yeah. And that was only Sunday. Now it's Saturday and Sunday. It was during the pandemic that they extended it to 2020, like that they, in 2020, I think that they extended it to 4 p.m. And now they're realizing it is busier now and it's causing a problem. I have to say as well, to sound like a NIMBY, I do live in a community, Champlain Park. It is like I basically live a block and a half south of the river, right by Island Park Drive and behind Island Park Drive. And so if you're trying to get to Gatineau, that Island Park Drive Champlain Bridge is a key route. This sort of late summer, early fall, in the fall, we just saw cars lined up in our streets. I've lived in this neighborhood 25 years. I've never seen anything like it. Bizarrely, just people, like, it would start around 2:30, 3 o'clock, and it would be hundreds of cars snaked waiting to get onto Island Park Drive to cross the bridge because they can't take the parkway. They're making illegal turns. One day, like, a guy is trying to legally stop. I had to call my counselor. I'm like
a neighbor?
Yeah, a neighbor is trying to stop cars from illegally turning. I'm like, you really shouldn't do
Punch
that.
in.
Yeah, I'm like, that's not going to work for us.
Yeah.
And so I think the NTC did hear some of this. You know, I know you say it's a war on cars. I mean, if you know CEO Toby Nussbaum at all, he's not exactly an anti-biking guy. But I think they thought, okay, well, last year, maybe it's the construction. There's construction on the Champlain Park Bridge, LRT2 construction still going on. So I think they're trying to bring it back now and see what happens. I know that this news will be very welcome in my community. Yeah, and so I don't know. I mean, I know you sound disappointed. I know.
Well, I'll tell you, I think there's a missed opportunity here for the city of Ottawa. And that is, we've got, there's going to be big changes to the tourism industry this year, right? With Trump and people not going south. And so there's an opportunity. How do we attract more tourists to a place like Ottawa? And when you think about one of the great virtues that Ottawa has is the potential cycling infrastructure that can attract tourists. And I got to say, so as a family, we have an RV. We travel around the country with our RV, and you want to know what you find in the back of RVs throughout everywhere?
Bicycles
on the back of RVs. So clearly there's a relationship between bicycles and holidays, and people like to, go to destinations where they have the chance to get on their bike and just be free. And so here we could, as a city, say, come to Ottawa and spend the weekend, and you can cycle around the whole place on these car-free parkways. But right now we're in a situation where we're decreasing the number of hours, number one. We don't even connect the 3 parkways. So that's another missed opportunity. And then on top of that, we're not even promoting it as
This is why we should close Wellington Street to traffic, as we described last week.
Now that's a key area for the people who don't ride a bike. It's hard and I bike, by the way, but they look at the closures where the closures are and they see bike paths right beside the waterways. Mm-hmm. And so yes, they're narrow. You're competing with joggers, you're competing with runners. But it's hard for people who don't ride bikes like maybe that we enjoy doing to understand why a whole road is closed when there's a path right there. And that's a tough argument to make. And I get it. Like, it's nice having a wider space for cyclists and to, of course, reduce the cars. But as we hear from Joanne's anecdote, the cars aren't going away. They're just being relocated somewhere else, right, where the traffic is. So it's good to promote. I think that mode of transportation is great for tourists, I think, if we have that. But I think if you're someone who doesn't rely on the bike, they see the paths there and they say, well, what's the deal? Why can't the bike? I think
it's also hard, too, because, the Alexandra Bridge was closed at the time. And it's hard to know, it's hard to control for other things going on in the city. Because as I say, I've never seen this kind of traffic in my neighborhood before, but it was also the pandemic before. And also it starts at 2:30, at a weird time. I don't know if it's folks going back home, because I don't think you're heading out for the day to the Gatineau's at 2:30. I don't know what's happening. So I think they're scaling it back. Although I have to say it is doubled what it used to be just a few years ago. It only used to be on Sundays. Now it's both days. And I'll be interested to see how that works out. And if they say, why do we have to change it by 4 hours? Maybe next year it can be open till 1 instead of noon, or instead of 4, right? So
yeah. So I just want to make one.
And also at the Dow's Lake thing, I'm going to be interested to see what they do.
Well, I want to make one last point, coming back to the Queen Elizabeth driveway downtown, and I do actually agree with that point that was made earlier. That I think there's a lot of this is around Lansdowne and access to Lansdowne, and that the proponents of Lansdowne advocate saying that we need this road closed, we need this road open to cars in order to get people in. But I just want to step back and look at
it's still going to be closed from 8 to 8 on both Saturdays and Sundays on Queen Elizabeth Drive, right?
Well, except for game days. Game days, they reopen it for cars,
right?
But
that's been the same, right? I'm not saying they're not acquiescing to them, because isn't it the same as in the past?
That's correct. But I just want to stop and think about urban design. You think about any city around the world, what is invariably the most expensive and most valuable real estate is waterfront, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet, what are we doing with our waterfront? We're putting essentially highways on both sides of it. Do we really need to, right?
Well, I mean, I know we're going to wrap up the point, but like, is that an important transportation car artery right now for the city?
Well, not according to our official plan, our
No.
city's official plan. That is not part of the transportation network. So, anyway.
And also,
Close them. That's it. We figured it out. Close them.
Yeah. And this is the
Bank
NCC
Street.
versus city stuff all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like that they're not working together to do that. Yeah.
Oh boy, we got
Yeah.
dinged.
We have a new sound effect. You know what that means?
Is it the lightning round?
It's time
Neil?
for the lightning round. Okay. So first point on the lightning round. We got a lot of feedback last week, and the number one topic that people wanted to comment on was X.
X. Did they comment on X? I don't know. Probably not. Probably not.
I felt very
No.
weird actually
Yeah.
putting our podcast on, and I'm like, this is
saw that.
ironic.
That was very ballsy. Like, yes.
But our audience was pretty clear, and there was a lot of support for the city moving off X. I did not see any support for the city staying on X. So, John, I'm kind of curious.
No one likes it.
Well,
I mean,
that's
I
right.
argue to
That's
be
right.
on it, and I hate it. Like, it's
Yeah.
weird.
Like, this is a really fast-moving debate, and I'm just kind of curious, John, whether given what people have said and the engagement that we've had, have your views changed on this at all?
No, they haven't actually, and I think that honestly, there should be. I still think the city should just think about its social media platforms, which they want to use, which are important communication tools to get the messages out that they need to the citizens of Ottawa when things are going on. And so I think it's a good idea for the city to take a look at their social media platforms and which makes sense to them.
So, Joanne, we've talked about last week that this will probably not go to full council because it was defeated. Would you like to see it go to full council, or do you think this debate should end here?
Well, I think it just started the debate, right? And I agree with John. And I have also been thinking about it for a week, like it just racked with guilt, right? Because no one likes it. If the people who voted to keep the city on it are not even on it themselves, right? It's owned by a terrible person that we should not be supporting. So in principle, I completely agree with Councillor Dudas's motion that why we should get off it. Except my pragmatic side also says, okay, well, are people really getting information this way? With their like 260,000 followers that are on it. But to John's point, like we got to start drilling down as a city into why are we on things? When do we get on them? When do we get off them? Figuring out if we're really reaching people. I asked the city today, they couldn't get back to me in time, but like, I hope we're not paying to advertise on X. Like, I don't want to give any money to this person and to this company. Don't retweet things. I think we need a policy that is much more granular and shows the return on investment here. We're on this platform that none of us seem to think is good because we think it's practical, but then we better have some evidence that it is practical. That's what I think on that.
Yeah.
Also, I don't think it is going to council from what I hear. Laura Dudas brought this because she wanted to be a leader in that the city should be a leader in showing their values, and she does not want to water it down to make it palatable. So, but I do hope somebody will bring a motion to say, yeah, let's look at this policy. Because I think it needs more discussion for sure.
Yeah, so I'm not convinced that we need a big policy discussion around this. Like, sure, it would be great to have analysis as to where we are actually reaching people, right? So we talk about 260,000.
Well, what if the analysis we're reaching them on X, and don't we need like?
Well, but no. I mean, we have we say the city has 260,000 followers. That doesn't mean anything about reach, right? I mean, I was looking at city posts recently versus say a year ago, and the number of views is going down, right? Just the way the algorithms being structured and who's actually getting it.
That's the analysis we'd like to see.
I agree. Where are people counting on city news from, except for this podcast, of course? But honestly, from the source, from the city itself. And so that's what I think the city needs to find out.
Yeah, but
Renew wants to be right. This is the problem.
Well, listen, I got to say, I am with Councillor Dudas on this.
Sure.
There are some areas where you need deep analysis and policy considerations. this is one where you just know what the right thing to do is.
I understand that view.
Should we be on
Yeah.
Facebook?
Yeah.
Wait,
Well,
should we be on TikTok?
Well, Facebook
I mean, are
is
we going
horrible.
ad hoc in
This
every
is the
single
problem,
social
right?
media
Facebook,
platform?
there's no way. I mean, I have a Facebook account, but I don't engage with people on it because it doesn't even allow you to actually post Canadian news stories. At least X lets you do that. Like it's like Facebook is terrible. It's terrible. They're all terrible.
We should go through them all. Every single one. See how terrible all social
Yeah,
media are.
excellent.
Okay, so we had a councillor write in to comment on our show, noting, and I'm going to quote, "It's so nice to hear government analysis that isn't Trump centric."
We did mention Trump a couple
Now
of times.
we did, and actually,
You kind of can't not.
I've been thinking about this, and I would love for this to be a Trump-free space. But I'm also realizing that like this guy's tentacles are everywhere, and he just, you just can't avoid him, and it just touches touches so far. Even like quiet little Ottawa, I think we are within his shadow. So do you think we're going to be able? How far can we get without talking about Trump?
I think the dirty secret or the elephant in the room is people actually like reading about it
Yes.
Yeah.
and talking about it,
Yes.
especially. And so as much as people and the councillor, thank you, councillor, for writing in, don't want to hear Trump talk, I think
It's a
people
great unifier.
pay attention to it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We all have to hate him together.
So let's turn to transit for a minute. So as I mentioned, this is Monday. There actually was a transit commission meeting a couple of hours ago. So we're not going to talk about that today.
It was 4.5 hours long. Like it was very long. I had it kind of in the back trying to like secretly work it, but yeah.
Okay. So we're going to
There's a
talk about
lot.
that next week. But I mean, are there any highlights from this morning or today that you could?
Yeah, I would say a couple things. One, the buses, like if you're a mechanic, if you're a diesel mechanic, I say this to my brother in Toronto, who is a retired TTC diesel mechanic, please come to Ottawa and help us because our buses are falling apart and we don't have enough people to fix them. Literally, there are like 150 requests a day for maintenance on the buses. They cannot keep up. We don't have enough mechanics. They had to actually retire 5 buses early this winter because they're like, this is too much work to keep them on the road. We can't do it. They're going to maybe have to retire some more in the spring. The e-buses are late, so it's not looking good. The other thing is on the LRT, stage 2, the eastern portion of it, like out to Trim Road, it looks like it might be substantially complete by June. And
June of
this year, yeah, good one. And we should be, and with any luck, we'll be riding it in this year. Now, I don't know when the western end is going to be done, but more stations will be completed, so it will at least look better. So yeah, looking forward to the details on that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. John, looking at the council calendar, is there anything that you can see over the course of the next week that you think we will be talking about next Monday?
Our salt use. I'm not talking about our fries or our poutine. We're talking about on the road, and it sounds like the Environment Committee is going to have a discussion about this. And I see this pop up on social media from time to time. People taking pictures of salt use at a bus stop or on a city sidewalk saying, how come the city uses so much salt? And this is something I've heard for years, and I think I've heard at City Hall before and past councils. So we'll see what this committee and maybe ultimately council has to say about the city's use of road salt.
Okay. Well, if you care about salt, let us know. So that's it for this week.
We didn't make 30 again. It's my fault. I know. I'm sorry. You need to use.
Did you use the bell for anything?
Just to introduce the lightning round.
I
Yeah.
Lightning
did.
round.
Would you like me to use it one more time?
Do it again.
There we go. End of the lightning round. So that's it for this week. So please comment on Substack, on YouTube, wherever you find us. If you're watching this through our Substack newsletter, just reply to that, and those comments will make their way to us. We love to hear from you. We love to hear your thoughts. And as you see it, we build it right into the lightning round. I'd like to thank, as always, our panelists, Joanne Chianello, John Willing. I'd like to thank our producer, Henry Allen.
Woohoo!
And I'd like to thank
give him a
all
bell.
of you. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us. We'll see you all next week.